Well, welcome to Solo Aging, going from we to me. And I'm so happy to see all of you here today. There's so many familiar faces, and we've got some new people here too. How many people have been to a seminar for Seacoast seniors before? Wow, lots of you. Awesome. I'm Nancy Puter. I'm the founder of Seacoast Seniors. My background is as a real estate broker for the last 47 years, and that remains to be my primary source of income. But about 6 years ago, I was grumbling about a situation that I had run into probably hundreds of times over the years, and that's when I was called out to list somebody's home for sale, and a crisis had already occurred. Mom had taken a fall, Dad had dementia. It was just, everything was breaking loose. The kids were fighting, and everybody had already made a bunch of decisions, a lot of times not good decisions, before they called me, because I was the last person they called to list the house. And on top of that, they were all there for the weekend, and they wanted to go back to their homes on Monday after they planned Mom or Dad's, rest of their life that weekend. So they would take off on Monday, and they would tell me, they'd leave Mom sitting in the armchair, and they would tell me, just call us when you get an offer. And so I would do the best I could to be a companion to the incapacitated person that was left behind. To a great degree, they were incapacitated. And I used to wonder, where the heck are the people to help these people? And this just happened again and again and again over the years. And do you know, in 47 years, not one person showed up. Not one person. So about 6 years ago, I was doing my usual grumble because I had just listed a property in a similar situation, and a little voice said to me, "You need to do something." And I thought, what? No way. I don't know anything about seniors. Even though I was becoming one, I was still in denial. And I thought, I don't have any extra energy. I was a real busy realtor, still am. And I didn't know how I would be able to fit in the time. So the voice wouldn't go away, and after 3 days, I sat down and got on my computer and found someone in Oklahoma that could train me. And 6 months later, I had my first seminar. During the pandemic, I had to hold up on the live seminars, and so I spent that time developing a crazy, wonderful, robust resource team of local professionals, of trust attorneys, in-home care providers, senior living communities, you name it, we've got it. Fiduciaries, anything that you could possibly need help with, we have the resource for you. Our only request is that if you do decide to sell your home, that you would give us a call. But it's not mandatory. Of course, we do not turn people away. So we're real glad you're here today. How many know that finding people in today's world can be daunting? And sometimes it can be so scary that what we do is we put our head in the sand and hope the problem will go away, right? So I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, "You've got sand in your hair." Okay, now turn to your other neighbor and say, "But not after today." We have a wonderful panel of experts here today that I'm very excited to present to you. They're all local, and they have all freely agreed to give their time today because they care that you get the information that you need. But before we have them introduce themselves, we're going to take a quick break. And how many knows that breaks around here are a little different than most workshops. So our breaks are called dance breaks. So all right, everybody up. Get up, wave your arms. This is going to be a very intense workshop, so we want to loosen you all up. Elaine, good to see you, honey. Hey, Dave, move it. Gunther's saying we need a dance expert. I am the expert. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Okay, let's see. I have to remember to turn it off before I run out of breath. Okay. All right, I'm going to let my speakers introduce themselves today, and then we're going to ask them some questions, all right? Okay, so we're going to start with Bob Crosby. I wanted to say Krawinski. I was mixing you two up for a minute. Okay, Bob Crosby, would you introduce yourself? Here's your microphone. Yeah, and you're going to be sharing.
Okay. All right, well, I'm Bob Crosby. I did not grow up here, but I married into a local family, so...
Hold it up to your face.
That makes me cool, so... my question is what's the cutoff for senior citizens? I mean...
Well, I don't think there is a cutoff.
Because I'm supposed to be 70.
I still can't believe I'm a senior.
Wow.
I guess any time after... What do you mean, wow?
No, you. I'm just talking about... I'm saying wow because I'm here and I'm
I was feeling like I was looking pretty good today.
I'm always...
So...
Careful, Bob.
Okay, I'm in trouble already. Look at that. He didn't even... I'm a CPA.
Okay, so I think 50 and up, you can start thinking about what the last chapter of your life is going to look like. You can't plan too early.
Okay, well, I'm going to be 70 in October, so I guess that makes me one. Anyway, I married a local girl and moved up here after I got my CPA. I grew up in Southern California, went to USC, went into the Navy. Thank you for your service. And then I went and worked private for a while, and my dad passed away. He was the president of the company. And so then I had to go get my something. So CPA was on the list. So anyway, have 3 kids, worked for various firms in town. Usually it was, if nobody wanted to do it, then Bob will do it. Bob does everything, so.
That's what makes you so great.
I have a wide variety of experience, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's been fun, and everybody thinks, oh, you're a boring CPA. Well, I got some stories, so.
One of the things I like about Bob's business is it's a family business. So his son has also joined the firm.
Well, everybody works there. It's called Crosby Company, and we're in San Luis Obispo, corner of Marsh and California. That's the way Arnold says it. You say it that way too?
San Luis Obispo.
Okay,
anyway, but we have fun, and my whole family works there. So, my oldest son is a computer programmer, but he has an office there. So.
Awesome. We're glad you're here, Bob. Doug, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, I'm Doug Buchanan. I'm an estate planning attorney. I've been here for a little over 25 years, so this is my second home as well. My wife and I, Deirdre, work together. She's a paralegal. So it's a small practice, but it's been very busy and continues to be very busy. I like to do estate planning so I can sit down with people and talk to them and develop their estate plans, but I also do probate and trust administration as well. So if a family member passes away or if a trustee needs representation, I can help with that. So it's nice to see such a great turnout, and I look forward to answering some questions. I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Gunther.
I have been up here since '78. I've been married for about 50 years.
Who are you?
Oh, I thought you already
I
said my
didn't.
name enough times there.
I
My
didn't
name's-
say your whole name.
My name is Gunther Krewinski.
Thank you.
And I have the privilege of serving as an associate pastor at Harvest Church in the city here. And I've been doing counseling for over 50 years with various types of individuals and needs, and have been trained in certain areas to help with that. But I have 3 children, 15 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. So it's a full-time job with them, and I enjoy that a lot. So hopefully I can help be a part of this panel and serve you.
We're really glad you're here, Gunther. Thank you. Okay, so, I think I want to start by asking all of you, what challenges do you see pretty often when one spouse has passed away and the other spouse comes in and lets you know what has happened, and they're pretty much like a deer in the headlight. They want to know what to do. Is that one of the challenges that you run into, or would it be something else? You don't all have to answer, but whoever would like to comment on that.
I'm just going to I'll pass the mic on this and, stop me from talking, because once I get started,
I will.
I can't stop.
Don't worry.
So, if you lose a loved one, something happens to your brain, okay? And they call it brain fog or whatever. You just can't think and you can't process information the way you did before. And your brain or whatever does recover, but it can take months, okay? So I have, I'm dealing with that with a client who's lost a loved one, a husband or a wife. And, people deal with that differently. So I'm always trying to find out, is there family support? Is family local, or
Hold your microphone close to your mouth.
is family local? Right. Okay. Or are they coming in from out of town? People come in the first couple weeks, but that's more for family gatherings, for memorial services, funerals, that sort of thing. So when I get that call, I might get it from my client, or I might get it from, a child of the client. I'll say, there's nothing we need to do immediately. Everything's going to be okay. Take care of, what needs to be taken care of with the family. When you get a death certificate, call me. But if you need to talk to me anytime before that, please do, okay? And we'll discuss any problems that are coming up. So that's the initial call.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I find with an individual that's lost their spouse unexpectedly, and that's different from having a spouse on a long pathway towards death, which is a whole different subject. But I find that they really just want to be listened to, empathetically. Sometimes friends don't know what to say and they won't say anything, or they'll say something like, it'll be okay. And it really doesn't help. I think just being able to listen empathetically and allow that to be a part of weeping with those who weep, in a sense. And as well as a challenge for me personally is not feeling like I have to fix it for them, because grief is individual and it has to be worked out individually with hopefully listening ears and helpful counsel when things come up.
Yeah, you know, Gunther, I think a lot of us have a tendency to withdraw when we hear that someone lost a spouse. And it's not because we don't care, it's because we can't think of the right thing to say. Thank God for sympathy cards, right? But, you know, if that's how you're feeling and you want to be there for somebody, you're not like their best friend. How do you approach them where you can listen to them, you know, just listen to them, allow them to be able to just talk without stepping in and trying to fix them? Would it be like maybe asking them if they'd like to go for coffee or if you could come by? How would you approach that type of a situation?
Well, usually the first time I'll meet with someone, I will just let them talk. They'll talk about their marriage, talk about their spouse, just talk. And without necessarily offering something unless they're asking a specific question, because that's further down the line, actually.
So maybe just say, do you mind if I stop by and just give you a hug? And then take it from there.
Yeah, I'll usually spend a good hour or so just listening. And I will ask certain questions because my wife was a paralegal for over 20 years. So I will refer them to hopefully an estate planner or a situation like a CPA.
Or Nancy Pewter at Seacoast Seniors, who has all of those people
Yes.
in her.
in her stable.
Yes.
Because those are important, as well as if they have medical needs, to be able to direct them to certain physicians or certain specialists in the area, because I was in the medical field for over 20 years as well.
Okay, great. Bob, I've got a question for you. A situation that I run into all the time as a realtor and when I'm interacting with my own clients is someone has lost a spouse and they've been relying on two sources of income, the Social Security times two, and all of a sudden, bam, they've got one income. Now, all of us sitting here are thinking, well, duh, they should have planned for that ahead of time. But how many of you know that usually we have twice the amount of people at our seminars as are here today? And that's because people don't want to deal with the possibility of losing a spouse. And so they stick their head in the sand, don't they? And so what seems like a no-brainer to us, plan ahead, may not be so clear to someone else who just can't go there emotionally. Right, Bob?
Right. What I usually do is when I have a tax client, we discuss a lot of this stuff. In fact, I'm required to discuss a lot of this stuff with my clients, so they're pretty much clear as to what's going to happen, and we're trying to set up things that need to be set up before they pass away, so that they have a living trust and things of that nature. I don't like to see people come in panicked when their spouse dies. I want them to know that this is something that we can work through. Don't treat it like a big wall right in front of you. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable, all the work I have to do. The tax code's set up where you have some leeway as to what you can, the things you have to do. There are things you have to do, but they give you time. And what I try to encourage everybody is that, okay, we're going to work through this. It's one thing at a time. Don't try to hit everything at once, one thing at a time. Otherwise, it's going to drive you crazy. So, and then the other thing is, where are we at on the tax code? There's some major changes coming up possibly with exemption amounts, that sort of thing. If you don't even know what that is, then you need to talk about it. to see if there's other things you need to do. It's been in such a flux, though, lately that we haven't really had to worry about tax planning with the states because the exemption amount's been close to $14 million. And so as a result, most people don't have $14 million, so they don't have to worry about it. That makes it easy for us. When it was down to 600,000, then it became pretty much crazy. You need to do some pre-planning, and we need to see where this is actually going. I haven't actually looked at it to see if Trump has extended this 14 million. I don't know if you've read into that or not, but
There's no bill that's been passed
yeah.
No.
So I tried to look at that the other night, and so it's essentially it's going from 14 million, from what I understand, down to 7 million. So if you're still under that, no worry. I don't have to worry about an AB trust or all these other fancy trusts that need to be done. But it's complicated. I'm dealing with a case that did have the $600,000 exclusion, and I'm still dealing with it. In fact, I'm filing some gnarly charges against some people because they haven't been following what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
So you need to be informed as to what you need to do, what needs to be done. Don't try to do it all at once, but work with somebody, and they can actually hold your hand through the process.
I just wanted to say, I know a lot of you don't have a CPA or a bookkeeper because you feel like you don't need one. First of all, it's not very expensive to have a CPA or bookkeeper at hand to help you when you need them. You made an interesting comment to me, Bob, when we met last week. And that was that when people have a trust, or even not, when your spouse passes, that you should call your accountant and share your trust with him so he can help you walk it out so you don't make costly mistakes. Would you like to comment on that?
That's right, but I've had situations where they've had the trust, but they didn't transfer anything into it. So as a result, I have to work backwards to try to get this stuff into it. And I can do it with the help of attorneys sometimes and get it all sorted. It gets overly complicated if it's multiple states, because then you have to go and find attorneys that are familiar with probate in other states. So it can get very complicated. So it's easier to talk this out, preferably with any one of us, to see what has to be done.
And Bob told me also, we're going to have question and answer at the end, so write down your questions so we can be sure and get to them. So it's really important to loop in a CPA or a bookkeeper into your care team. We're all building a care team for our journey, our aging journey this year, right? Make sure you write down CPA or bookkeeper. We have you collecting all these professionals locally. And if you lose any of the phone numbers or anything we give you, just don't lose my number. Because if something happens, and tell your kids too, if a crisis happens, call Nancy, because I will know what you need and who to connect you with. And the people that we connect you to are the guys in the white hats. They're not the questionable people that you might grab off the internet or who your next door neighbor used, who might not be the best fit for you. So just, my phone is, always on during the day, and I don't take calls at 2:00 in the morning. But if you leave a message, I will get back to you.
Can I add something to this on a personal basis?
Thank you. Yes.
I think for those of you that are married in here, it is really important that you talk about this with your spouse. The old saying is, if we talk about it, we're going to die tomorrow. But it is crucial that you talk about these hard subjects and you plan, for instance, doing pre-need burial and cremation services before it happens, so that the surviving spouse as well as the family is pretty much, they can do the memorial or whatever you're wishes are can be done ahead of time. But being able to talk with each other about the difficulties, finances, because sometimes, like my wife is great at the books, and I have to constantly be aware of changes that she's made so that in case she passes away, I know at least where to go and what to do initially. So don't avoid that. Dive into that because it can really be helpful for the surviving spouse.
Thank you, Gunther. Doug, what advice would you offer a spouse or a partner to be better prepared for a loss if their partner has become incapacitated or, unable to take care of their own affairs? And I know you've already spoken a little bit on that, so I'm going to tag this question on too. So what are the core estate planning documents that you should have in place ahead of time?
I like the second question more than the first, but I deal with that a lot. And when I was kind of a new attorney and my clients would come to these problems, I just didn't have the life experience to really counsel my clients on how do you deal with a spouse that has dementia? What kind of caretaking arrangements can be made? I didn't know, to ask the question, is your husband a veteran? There's resources there. So, that, and I've just noticed in the last 25 years that there are more resources here available for people on the Central Coast. We have more seniors. It's a great place to live, so that's understandable, and it's great to see that we have more professionals and more services available to family that are experiencing these difficulties. So, call Nancy. So, but, the core estate planning documents would be first to determine whether or not you need a will or a trust. Okay, if you own real estate in general, a trust would be the best way to plan. Okay, there are different types of trusts, but for most cases, we've set up what's called a revocable family trust that both the husband and wife are in control of and can change, and it holds property. So what Bob said is true. Sometimes people will bring in their book that they set up 20 years ago, and we find out that there's no property actually titled in the trust. Well, that's a real problem when people die, because that triggers probate. Okay, probate is a court process to get property from our estate to our beneficiaries. Okay, so that's something that will versus trust. So there's a conversation about that. And then the other documents would be powers of attorney. So nobody wants to think that they would be incapacitated, but most likely in our lifetime, that's going to happen at some point. So if we live long enough, right? So we want to have a durable financial power of attorney, as well as, and there are different words for this, different titles, but it would be an advanced healthcare directive, or a healthcare proxy, or a living will, or healthcare power of attorney. They're basically all the same thing, okay? But you need to have one. So those are the core documents that we need to have in an estate plan. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Doug. I have one more question, Doug, while you've got the microphone. You've heard me ask this question before, but I want to ask it again because we do have a lot of new people here today. What if I said to you, oh, well, we went down to the title company last year and we just put the title of the house into my daughter's name. That way, when we die, there won't be any problems. Easy peasy, right?
Okay, so as a lawyer, you may have heard stories about what we call joint and several liability, and it can happen, say, when a parent gives their teenage son or daughter a car, but keeps the parent on title. Okay, and then of course the child gets into an accident, and the parents get sued. Okay, well, the same thing can happen if you put a child on title with your house. Okay. If the child gets sued or goes through a divorce, suddenly that house could potentially be pulled into the proceeding. So joint and several liability or joint tenancy is not usually what I recommend for my clients, okay? And then there's another thing about adjusted basis in joint tenancy, and I'm going to turn all the tax questions over to Bob.
Yeah, that's a good segue there. Okay, Bob, why don't you continue to comment on that?
For years, we've heard about. He doesn't want to hear me. Now do you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
For years, we've heard about step up in value of your property. Your spouse dies, and the other spouse, the living spouse, depending on how you hold the property, if it's joint tenancy, the basis all of a sudden jumps up to date of death valuation, or in some cases 6 months thereafter, in the alternate date of death valuation. Everything's been going up, but now we're hearing word that things might be going down. So there may be a situation where you have a step down in basis, which would be adverse to what you want it to do, in that if you were going to sell that asset after your spouse died, if it stepped down, you could end up, being in a situation where you have some capital gains, depending on how long you hold it. So essentially, these are things you need to think about. Again, also finding out what are the tax ramifications of dying this year versus next year. There's all kinds of things you have to consider, and that's why you need to talk to an expert or somebody that's in the know so that you can get some good information.
Right. And Bob, hold on to that microphone. Usually, at some point after you've lost your loved one, either your attorney or your CPA or bookkeeper, I like to say bookkeeper because it doesn't sound as expensive, but they're going to ask you for a time of death appraisal. And so they'll say you need to call an appraiser and have them come out and do an appraisal based on the date that your partner passed away. Most people go and they hire an appraiser, and it costs about $600. But I want all of you to know, and I'm conditioning all of my professionals to recommend that they call me, because even though we're not certified appraisers, we do what you call a market analysis, which is acceptable in 99.9% of the time in any court proceedings. And we'll do that for you absolutely free. So please remember that. And if you have any friends who have lost a spouse, they have a trust, they will be asked that question, and you could be a hero and save them $600. So, the other question I wanted to ask you is, I guess I went ahead and stole your thunder on that.
I got more thunder.
You got more? You want to talk about that some
Well,
more?
I don't want to upset anybody here. Any appraisers in the audience? Good, I can see. Appraisers are the second profession. I don't know if you know what the first profession was, but that's another seminar. But essentially, shop around. If you didn't get the right value you wanted in the appraisal, there's other ways of presenting it so that the appraisers might up the value or lower the value. And
Right, and if you're talking to me and we want upper or lower, we can work with that, because appraisals and every appraiser who's honest will tell you this is the truth.
well, you can get up to a 40% discount if it's going to multiple people, as far as a joint or partnership type deal where it's an undivided interest. You can get this 40% discount, and that makes a big difference when you've got estate taxes. Again, we haven't had that problem lately, but if you're into high value real estate, that could be a situation. And that's exactly the thing that I'm dealing with this one that goes back to 1993.
Oh,
So-
wow.
Anyway, so this stuff doesn't go away. I mean, it continues onward, and depending on what you do through the whole process of shifting properties around, there's a lot of latitude that you can take with this stuff.
So the way you hold title, does that have a bearing on how you'll be taxed?
It used to be that if it's separate property, that's going to be the valuation is going to be different than joined. The IRS, I've had situations where it was separate, and they still allowed the double step up in basis. So it's like, hey, if they're going to allow that, we're going to allow it too.
Yeah.
But the IRS, the quality of agents we have right now has declined immensely. And it's very hard to deal with the IRS. So the main thing you want to do is stay off the radar so they don't come and attack you. I'm working with a case where this guy has been harassed by the IRS for 25 years. It's a quarter century.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I just sent out a letter last week, 2 weeks ago, basically saying, look, there's 4 auditors here, and you guys have violated his Bill of Rights, and you've already sent him to jail once, and you were at the fault. It wasn't his fault. And he didn't have proper guidance before he decided to plead guilty to this thing. But now we're in a situation where he could end up with a couple $1 million in penalties against the IRS, and possibly, as we warned every one of these guys, look, you keep harassing him, we can send you, they call it qualified immunity, we can send you to jail because you are now creating a felony in this situation. So there's a lot of things you can do with the IRS, and I've never been, if I can do it, I do it. If I can.
Bob's not a whammy-pammy CPA.
So
Yeah.
it's actually kind of fun. Everybody's like, oh, you're a boring CPA. I say, yeah, you come with me sometime.
Yeah.
There's some things that get really exciting. You're the same way.
This is the guy that you want in your court if you have any problems with the IRS. You know, a lot of CPAs say that they go to bat for you, but not that many really do. Bob's
I worked with
living proof.
a terrible CPA, and her tax returns are always getting audited. And she was terrified of the IRS. So I got my name out there quite a bit because I always represented her clients before the IRS. And it got to the point where they knew me pretty well. And I usually was able to win. I can't remember losing.
That's good. That's a good sign.
Anyway, but you know, it's pretty easy to predict what's going to happen with these IRS audits. And I
Right.
always do a mock IRS audit before I go in, and I try to make sure that the client isn't invited with me to that IRS audit. Because it's easier for me to say, I don't know, sir, but I will find out, instead of having my client, say something they shouldn't be saying, that type of thing.
Let's talk to Gunther for a little while here. Gunther is very experiencing in helping you go through the grief process, and that's why we invited him today. He has a lot of wonderful qualities, but grief is what I asked him to speak on today. And so I know that it's a challenge. It's always a challenge because every person is different, but when people come in and let you know that their partner has passed, what challenges and advice would you offer to them at that time? But not only that, to our people today to prepare in advance, if there's any way to prepare emotionally on losing a spouse.
I think you're exactly right, Nancy, that grief is individual. And so there's no right way to grieve, except on the road you're going, you got to have guardrails. You ever been up an extremely bad mountain or down a mountain and, fog or snow and those guardrails help keep you from falling off the cliff. It's really important that at least you have some ideas of what to do as you're approaching it, or even if some of you in here have already lost your spouse. It's very lonely. You can feel very isolated. If you're an introvert, you can really isolate extremely to where even your family or friends can't reach you. So it is important that even if you are an introverted person, that at least you have a small cadre of friends that you can do one-on-one support with, that will be there for you, that you can trust. And then hopefully family members at different times will be there with you as well. But if you don't happen to have that, then joining a support group like GriefShare. GriefShare, we have GriefShare groups that go on at different churches in the area, as well as even some of the local senior centers will carry a GriefShare group. So being able to share your sorrows with other people who've experienced it, they talk your talk, they understand what that's like, and they can offer real support instead of just theoretical. Sometimes the grief is so hard to bear, though, you might need to speak to a qualified therapist or grief counselor to be able to work through those kernel points that are just blocking the way. So that can be helpful. Let's say talking about your loss is very hard. I mean, there's some men in here that talking about your feelings and emotions are like, forget it, I'm not going to do that. I'll just bear up and do that. If you're not able to, it's always good to maybe write down your thoughts in a journal. What are you feeling, for example, and put it in a journal. Because as you go through that journal time, whether it's on your computer, your iPad, or even if you're old school and write down in a real journal, you can look through, as you're moving through the grief process, you can look back and you can see the changes that have helped along the way. Because sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to see that you're making progress. So it's important that you see a timeline, or you're bouncing it off someone you trust who can tell you, no, you're doing okay. Maintaining your hobbies and interests, or even developing a new activity, is really important. Sometimes the shadow of grief can just feel like it just invades every area of your life. And so it is important that you still maintain some normality in your life. Hobbies, friendships, exercising, or develop even a new activity that can really sort of make something new as you're moving through the process. Now, these suggestions have helped a lot of people. They're good guardrails. But I think there's two absolutes. Please don't let anyone tell you how to feel, and don't tell yourself how to feel. Your grief is your own, and no one can tell you it's time to move on or get over it. Let yourself feel whatever you need to, without embarrassment or condemnation from others or yourself even. It's okay to be angry. Yell at the heavens. Cry, not cry. It's also okay to feel relieved. For instance, when my parents that we took in, my dad had Alzheimer's and my mom had crippling arthritis. And so this process of watching someone so close to you, in fact, it was the best of times and worst of times for me, because I got to know my dad, because as the disease progressed, the barriers dropped. And he had been through the Depression, been through, World War II as a teenager and the Korean War. So as the defenses dropped, I got to know my real dad, and I became so close. We became so close. And then, of course, he slipped away, and I became the parent, he became the child. And so when they passed finally, I felt this sense of relief. And I was like, I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I'd been told by professionals and read about it that that's normal to feel that way. Because that burden of caring for someone you love is deeply personal, And it just basically puts your life on pause many times. And this is why there's helps in this area for people going through Alzheimer's or other crippling diseases where there are support groups for that. So please, consider that, or at least put that down. And Nancy, you probably have some people in your stable for that, I'm sure. Also, plan ahead for grief triggers, anniversaries, special events, birthdays. Put them in your phone so that you're reminded a week ahead. So when that emotional wallop happens, at least you're prepared for it. So those are just some things personally about that.
Wow, I feel like I've just had my own therapy session. Anybody else feel that way? Yeah. Thank you, Gunther. I was glad to hear you talk about, don't isolate and don't, withdraw, lean towards people, not away from people. You could join a group. Some people like me, that sounds horrifying. Most of you don't know that I'm an introvert. It's really hard to tell when I'm up here, but I am. So my natural inclination on any given day is to go home. If I'm having a bad day, put on my robe, turn on a detective show, and call it good till the next day. But, there's things that you can do that aren't so intimate right out the gate. One of the things is you can go to one of the local senior centers. Those have been life-saving for a lot of people. Prudence, you said you go and hang out down the local one sometimes, right? Playing cards. And Bob, when I first said go down to the senior center and have some fun, you looked at me like I had two heads. Next time I called him, he was running out the door to go play bingo down at the down at the senior center, and he's brought friends from there to our seminars. Because, a lot of us, it was our spouse that was the outgoing one and had all the friends. And now that the spouse is gone, we just want to withdraw into ourselves. But there's lots of opportunities, things you can do that where people aren't going to get right in your face and say, oh, poor baby, because that's not what you want to hear. So volunteering is another option. And believe it or not, a part-time job is not out of the question. A lot of older adults are being hired out there. There's a lot of different jobs that you can step into, make a little bit of extra money on the side, and meet new people where the whole focus isn't on you. So lots of ideas. And if you need to know how to get a hold of any of those things, just get a hold of me, and I'll be happy to direct you to some good organizations. I can't find you a job. You're going to have to do that one on your own. So, let's talk to Doug for a little while. Doug, let's see. We talked about that. What's the optimal way to title our bank accounts or hold title in any of our accounts, including real estate? And also, what's the best way to designate beneficiaries?
Yeah, this is something that, if I have a new client with a trust, I want to know everything. Okay, so we're starting, with a blank sheet of paper, and we're identifying every account, every piece of property that they own, and how it's titled. And then we kind of have to wade through the considerations, okay? Typically, joint accounts or real estate would go into the trust, okay? But then I have to have a discussion that Bob can, help me out with about IRAs, and that a traditional IRA is a taxable account. It's a creation of federal law, okay? So we have to abide by the rules that surround IRAs. Well, one of the rules is that the IRA must be owned by an individual person And the beneficiary designation is how you get the benefit out to your beneficiary, okay? It doesn't go through a will or a trust or a joint ownership arrangement, okay, which we can do with other accounts. So another issue that comes up is I always tell my client, well, name your spouse as primary. And they say, well, what about contingent, okay? Should I name the trust? And we used to do that, but now we're having some institutional problems or problems dealing with institutions about administering IRAs that are left to trusts. And that has to do with changes in the law, okay? And so in the last few years, I had an IRA that was left to a trust, and the stepmother ended up being the trustee of this IRA and overseeing the distributions to her 3 stepchildren, and she had to do this for the next 10 years. And she was 84 years old, and she didn't really want to do this, so maybe there's a better way to plan that, okay, to avoid that outcome, okay? So those are the considerations that we have to look at, okay? Another consideration is if we have a child that's looking after a parent, instead of putting, instead of having that account held in the trust, we may set up a joint account with that. Oh, did that go off? We may set up a joint account arrangement with that everyday expenses account, okay? Just because it's simpler. And, simple is good. I'm not against making things simpler for my clients, okay? Now, if it's decided that a child should be on the trust account, then I have to prepare a document to make that child an active participant in the trust or a co-trustee. And my clients will call me from the bank and say, well, I just came down here with my kid and my daughter, and we're trying to get her on the account, and they're saying they need something, okay? Well, they do, okay? And I can help my clients with that, and that's a simple document, okay? And then we can bring the child in as an active participant. So those are the things that can come up, and we have a lot of flexibility with accounts, and it's not one size fits all, okay? So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Doug. A lot of our clients have used Doug as an attorney. He's very caring and loving, and he's been known to come to you if you can't go to him. So he's a winner. All 3 of these guys are just absolutely number 1 in my book. Bob, a lot of times I have people come to me. A lot of times they'll tell me stuff that they don't tell other people. As a realtor, you'd be surprised. I visit with people when they are the most vulnerable. And I don't know if they consider me a neutral party or what, but they spill their guts to me. And one of the things I hear a lot is my husband took care of all the bills and now he's gone and I have no idea what to do. Are you equipped in your business to be able to maybe put them through a little training session for a couple of months until they're up and rolling, or even take on the bill paying for them?
Well, normally I have people that'll do that. And we don't do a lot of bookkeeping in our firm, but I have independent bookkeepers that work with me twofold to help them pay the bills, but also if it's in a trust, a lot of times we need to do trust accounting, and we have to do that right. It has to be prepared for the court, especially if there's adverse dependents that are ready to attack at any moment. So some of these situations, you need to make sure you're covering your rear end as far as them coming back on you, because all of a sudden I'm instantly liable or whatever if I told somebody to do the wrong thing. So it's imperative. I think the main thing is communication, and if they don't feel like they can handle the books, I'll give them a quick class. A lot of times they pick up on it and they go, oh, I could do that. So I had one client came in and her husband did everything, and she came in terrified that she had to do her taxes that year. And so at the end of tax season, she came up to me and she said, "Well, Bob, how did I do?" I said, "Well, you are the master dribbler. You dribbled your stuff in all tax season, but you got it all in." So the next year, this lady's 90 years old. She got herself a Lakers jersey, and she wore that to the tax meeting. And she said, "Well, if I'm going to be a master dribbler, I'm going to dress like one."
That's
But
perfect.
she worked. She made it through. I mean, a lot of times people just want to know, and I recommend that they learn how to do it because they know what their finances are. I actually hate using bookkeepers
Mm.
because if I don't have track of something, it drives me nuts.
We're all different, and a lot of us are old school, where the man handled everything. Or nowadays, a lot of times the woman is handling everything. But either way, the other partner is sunk if the spouse is taken from them suddenly. And this is why we want you to build your care team. And the first person you should call when your partner spouses, after you notify your family, after your spouse passes, after you notify your family, is get on the horn to your CPA and your attorney and let them know what's happened. Okay, so we're going to open it up right now. We have a 10-minute Q&A session. So if you have a question right now, go ahead and I'll repeat the question.
Okay, I have two questions. Can you get data death appraisals, can you get more than one?
Can you get more than one time of death appraisal?
What happens? How are they reported? Does anyone know? Whatever.
No, you can shop around, and it doesn't have to be a actual appraiser in some cases. It just has to be somebody in the profession. So that could be here. So, and I've been able to do that with, again, I don't have to deal with it too much except for like business property where they're going to sell it later or that sort. But or if it's going to be in a trust, we need a basis for it. And sometimes you want a lower basis. Sometimes you want a higher basis. It's all how you present it to the appraiser. If this is for the IRS, for an estate tax return, they're not going to give you a low appraisal. They're going to go all the way up because they don't want to get in trouble with the IRS.
That's why you want something fair.
So
you know.
I can think of different professions that will give you different appraisals based on what you want.
You want?
For some reason you can't get multiple.
Oh,
No, you can if you want to.
you can. It doesn't get recorded anywhere. It's whatever one you want to present to whatever agencies you.
We'll get back to your second question after, if we have time. Right here?
Yeah, if you're single and you sell your house, what percent of that's going to be taxed?
If you're single and you sell your house, how much are you going to be taxed?
Well, you're going to have a situation where if your wife, in your case, was alive during the year that you're selling it, you could actually get 250,000 exclusions. If you wait, you may end up with just one. So,
So you're saying you deduct $250,000 from whatever you sell it for?
yes, I mean, it essentially adds to the basis.
Okay.
But also keep in mind, you're going to get a step up in basis at this point when one passes. So unless things are going red hot and they're going up, you're probably not going to have to worry about it too much. That make sense?
Well, I don't understand the step up, but
That's
You
based
can
on
talk,
the
they'll,
previous lady's question about appraiser. Which appraiser do I get? It's the one you want.
exactly, yeah. And, the speakers will be here afterwards, so the Q&A session's pretty short, but they're here to answer any questions, especially that might be of a more personal nature. Dave?
Yeah, let's say we have a trust with both the spouse and myself as primary, and the question specifically is, by the way, my spouse is on the edge; she's under hospice now. The long and the short of it is, when do we do the valuation analysis? Right at the date of do I need to call you when she passes away?
You can call me 2 years later if you want, and I can still do it. All I need is the date that she died.
Passes, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Essentially, you have the date of death. When you tell an appraiser, it's like, I need this date of death.
Okay,
You can do your analysis 6 months later, a year later.
yeah,
But also keep in mind, the IRS allows an alternative date of death, which could be is up to 6 months later,
uh-huh,
which you could take your pick as to which one you want to use.
okay,
Okay? And when you do a 706 form, that's for the estate tax return.
yeah,
You can choose either one. You make the election up at the top of the page and it says, I use the alternative valuation. Okay?
okay,
But CPAs will know that. They should. If they don't, point it out to them.
okay.
Who else? Yes, right here.
I have a question for Doug about estate planning, because I have a significant other that's 93, she's okay, but, she has a will.
Mhm.
When is a will enough? She has no property.
Oh, that's a loaded question. We do another whole seminar on that.
Okay.
Wills versus trusts.
Right.
Can you briefly cover the
Yeah.
bottom line on that?
And that's, when I do a free consult with new clients, and that's the first topic is will versus trust, right? So we spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes discussing that, and I'll try to give you the short version, okay? But if you have someone who owns a car and has some accounts and some personal property, we can use beneficiary designations on accounts, right? Or TOD or POD, those are all the same thing, just designating a person that account goes to after your death. Then those accounts are not subject to probate, okay? If we have an estate under $184,500, and that's a moving number, every year it goes up a little bit, then we're not subject to probate. Now, there was a recent change in the code where the primary residence up to, I believe, $700,000 and $184,500 is exempt from probate. That's new, okay? Really new, okay? I was actually surprised about it, after New Year. It's like, wow, okay. So the legislature does, make these changes, and that's a good one. I would still say if you have a house, that the trust is the best way to plan for that, and not to just rely on a simple will, okay?
Life insurance is that just goes to the beneficiary.
As long as the life insurance the policy designates an individual beneficiary and not the estate, okay? Because that can trigger a probate too, right? Yeah, so it is important to check beneficiary designations on life insurance policies as well. It's a good question.
Gunther, I think we're going to save any more questions till afterwards. So my promise is always to get you out of here by 11:30. And as much as I'd like to continue, if I don't, I'll hear about it. There's a certain few that will let me know that we went on way too long. So, but Gunther, I wanted to ask you, do you have a final word on grieving before I wrap it up? If the answer is no, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I think because your life is on pause seemingly for so long, and you're just, hopefully if you've talked about, remember I mentioned cremation or pre-burial needs, getting that settled sooner, is that as you're going through this, and you touched on it, this is where you begin to start living your life outside of your grief by volunteering your time, because it's an amazing thing that when you give away, you actually start receiving back more. So that's something along this line that eventually, hopefully, you can get to.
Thank you, Gunther. And as I said earlier, all of the speakers will be here to answer any questions that we didn't get to. And so I think right now, once again, I'd like to thank my sponsors for I guess we're not going to have them on the screen. Oh, wrong one. No? Oh, well. Anyway, I I'd like to thank my guest speakers again. Can we give them all a big hand? I think they did great, don't you? Yeah. And again, thank you to our sponsors. We have a raffle gift to give away. Does everybody have a raffle ticket? Oh, and also I wanted to ask, is there anyone that came to the last seminar and they're due a Panera gift card and we didn't have them with us last time? That is owed one because we got enough today. Okay, good. All right. Am I forgetting anything, anybody? Okay. All right, so I want you to start thinking about putting your care team in place and call me if you don't know who to call. And I've got some really good raffle gifts here. I'm going to go back over here, Sam, because I know that's where you like me. Okay. The first one is a $25 gift certificate to Subway. And here comes our beautiful Michelle. Do you want to pull one for me? And the number is?
1751199.
Agnes, did you win? Awesome.
Great.
This might be Agnes's first time, but we've known each other for so many years. Okay, our next one is a $25 gift certificate to Panda Express. And the number is?
1751187. All right. Oh, there's one more.
And our next one is a pretty cool little disposable grill. It's got the charcoal and everything. So you just cook your meal, wait till it cools down, and then throw it in the trash. And the winner is?
1751192.
There's our winner.
I don't think that. Next, pick another.
Okay. Next one. Next lucky winner is?
1751203. Yay.
You could have just handed it to her. Remember, if we ever give you something you don't want, you can always re-gift. Our feelings will not be hurt. So I want to thank all of you for coming today. Please keep in mind that my day job is as a realtor. So if you are thinking about selling your house, that's the greatest compliment that you can give me, is to allow me to represent you. So our next seminar is June 11th, and back by popular demand, it's driving after 80. I posted that online last time we did this, and some wise guy answered, "Please don't." But little do they know that, today's 80 is what the new 60. So we've come a long way, baby. Yes. Yes, it will be here. Yeah, we're back here permanently now, for now. So I hope to see you then. You could sign up before you leave. Just put it on your evaluation sheet, or you'll get an invitation. Make sure that we have your contact information, your email, and if you prefer snail mail because you don't like to use email, write that down too, and we have a special handful of people that we do actually mail the invitations to. So, gosh, there was something else. Oh, the learning cards. Michelle, you want to start coming around with the hole puncher and picking up some evaluation sheets. Michelle will punch your learning card, and she's pretty quick, so it's not going to hold you up getting out of here. So thanks again for coming.